Promotional consideration brought to you by...
Hi there, I'm Brian Finlay. I've been working in the animation industry for over 20 years. Come join me as we explore the process of creating an animated cartoon. We'll meet some amazing people along the way, right here on Drawn to It, Behind the Screens. Hi, welcome back to Drawn to It Behind the Screens. Today's episode is all about the rough animation process, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that animators should be thinking about while they're animating, including acting choices. In fact, I've arranged a special acting demonstration with our voiceover actor, John Frank. You might remember him from episode 3, as well as my daughter, cosplayer, Grace Finlay. So here we are at Kennebecasis Valley High School, and we're going to go in and borrow their theater, and we're going to see a little demonstration on character acting. Now, that's important because right now we're ready to take our project from the storyboard stage into the character animation stage. But before we do that, we should understand a little bit more about character motivation. So let's go inside and get our thespian on. Come on. We're here today to talk about character acting, character animation, and good performance. All characters have different personalities, they have different designs, shapes. They could be an animal, they could be a human, they could be a teapot. So they're going to behave differently in any circumstance. For instance, how would a character drink a cup of water? Would the character be aggressive? Maybe the character would be regal. Or maybe the character would be unsure. All of these ways, the character is going to act completely different. But it's really up to the animators to bring the nuances in. We're going to check in with David Pruiksma. He's a legendary 2D animator, and he worked on many of your favorite Disney animated films. He animated the teapot from Beauty and the Beast.
Hi, my name's Dave Pruiksma, and welcome to my home studio. I was a Disney animator, classically trained by many of the surviving 9 Old Men. I worked 20 years as a supervising animator at Disney Feature Animation during their second golden year. And I now am co-founder of Cat's School of Animation, where we do a lot of teaching to both young people, people who are already in the industry, and people who hope to get in the industry. This is where everything happens for me, is right in this small area. And a blank piece of paper can be one of the scariest things you've ever seen, but it can also be the one more filled with promise, the one that gets your imagination going. What's going to go on here? As the animator, I'm responsible for the performance of the character. I'm really the actor. My role as an animator is to make sure the character is consistent with the models that were drawn for the character, and that the performance stays consistent, and that the tonal quality of the voice and the emotional resonance of the vocal performance gets portrayed in the motion and the actions that I choose for the character. So the first thing I do when I'm assigned on a scene is talk to the directors about what is important to be communicated in the scene, what actions need to happen, what the feeling of the scene should be. And then I can go and I can start experimenting by doing thumbnails or doing some rough animation to kind of get a feel for how the character's going to move. Once I have this, I can go back to the directors, show them what I'm thinking, make sure it's in keeping with what they want. They can make suggestions at this point, and it saves a lot of time because then I can go back and start animating in earnest. As an animator, I'm responsible for the key drawings, the drawings that are the important drawings in the scene. Not that all the drawings aren't important, because they all get the same screen time, but the ones that tell the story. At that point, I can hand it off to an assistant with notes telling them how I want the other drawings done. But I don't have to do 24 drawings for every second. I can do the main key drawings and shoot them and time them longer just to get a feel for how the motion is working in a pose test, they call that. And I don't know whether, I'm hoping you can see this, but I can roll through them and I can test to see if the animation is working. I can roll through by working on the bottom pegs here. I can roll through several drawings at a time. So I can test and see, okay, there's a flow and a continuity. These are not individual drawings with other individual drawings between them. There are forces connecting them all, whether that's drag and overlap or stretch and squash, straights and curves. All of that is part of the continuity, and that's all what I'm planning here. So it's a very simple action, but a lot is going on within that, the drag and overlap and whatnot. And then the character finally ends here. Now, as I said, there are drawings missing because I need a minimum of 12 drawings per second on the screen, and these are considerably less than that. So after I do my extremes and breakdowns, then I add a chart to the side of the paper here, which shows this drawing and the drawing that it's moving towards, and how many drawings are between them and how I would like them spaced. I think the technology has brought a lot more production value to animation and simplified a lot of very laborious process. I remember when we did Little Mermaid and everything was done on cells, hand inked or Xeroxed and painted. And then they said, well, the next film we're going to do Rescuers Down Under, which is going to be all computer colored. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. It's always been done on cells. That's the way it's done. I don't know how they can do that. Well, from the very beginning, I could see how much more production value that came into those movies. But I love the fact that, you know, when I started at the studio, I had to pick up the paper and flip it and get my timing and everything that way. And I just kind of would guess that it worked based on what the exposure sheet said and what the drawings were doing. And then I had to send that out to camera where it was shot. It took 3 days, and then it would come back in a 35 millimeter black and white line test loop. And I would have to put that on a moviola and watch a loop over and over and over again, making notes on the corrections. Well, soon after I got to the studio, we started shooting on videotape, and we could see instant feedback on our stuff. And I think that creates a faster turnaround, which means you can make changes quicker, which means you grow faster. And I think that was one of the key technologies that really brought about a renaissance in animation in the 80s and 90s in particular. When I'm assigned on a character, if I'm a supervising animator, it's my responsibility for the personality of the character to an extent. I mean, we do have vocal tracks to work with, and we do have a story in which the character fits, but there's a lot of room for nuance within the character. So what I do is I think about personalities I have known that I find interesting. I think about actors and characters in films and television that I've seen that I think are right for the character, but I don't lift them specifically. I try to make a new amalgam of them. So let's say in the character of the Sultan in Aladdin, I would take the voice, Douglas Seals, and I would have that. He had a warmth to it. I used a little bit of my father in that character. At one point, he's building a little tower of toys, and he's got his tongue out. And my dad used to do that, and I find myself doing that sometimes when I'm really focusing or concentrating.
As an audience member, though, there's something you should know about animation. It's a giant lie. You think you're watching moving characters, but you're really just watching a stack of carefully crafted drawings, and they're designed to make you think that the characters you're watching are real. The science behind animation, in fact, the whole reason why it works, is because of a visual phenomenon called persistence of vision. This is where your eye will see something just a fraction of a second longer than it's there for. This is generally accepted as 1/24th of a second, which is why most feature films and animated films are shot at that frame rate. Don't believe me? Look at this simple experiment. On one side, we have an empty bird cage. On the other side, we have a bird. If I spin it very fast, the bird will look as if it is inside the cage. Persistence of vision. You can see the same effect if I roll these two drawings, if I flip them back and forth. You can see there's a bit of a feeling of movement there with the character. And the movement, if I add a third drawing and roll them, there's even more movement. As an animator works on their extreme keys and they roll them like this and get a sense of the major movement, they can then go in and do breakdown drawings and in-betweens. The more drawings you add, the smoother the motion is. So through carefully drawn poses and following principles such as stretch and squash, you can see a nice squash there with our character and a nice stretch in this pose. By drawing these poses and the expressions so carefully and keeping in mind how anatomy works, then when you play them back at 1/24th of a second, you get beautiful movement and you feel as if the characters you are watching are real. Curtis Ryu and his whole staff at Stellar Boar Productions have been very busy with our animated short, A Good Day to Draw. Right now, they're going in and applying all of the animation techniques we've talked about from episode 1 until now. They're going in, they're drawing their extreme keys of the character, they get them approved, and then they do their breakdowns and their in-betweens. Even their background artists are busy painting the backgrounds. It's going to be awesome to get all that artwork back and see the short come together. In fact, let's look at some of the rough animation right now. Here's a couple line tests.
Pimples?
Wasn't that cool? And that's just rough animation. The more time you put into analyzing your motion, the stronger your animation will be. In fact, here's a tip. Most cell phones now have slow motion filming. So why not film yourself acting out the motion and study it in slow motion? You'll get a great idea of how the weight is shifting back and forth and the ease in and ease out of different body parts. Animators have been using live action as reference since the very beginning. It's not a cheat, it's a tool. Once it's approved, it'll be sent off for cleanup and ink and paint. We'll talk more about that in the next episode of Drawn to It Behind the Screens.